I rise to speak on the government's response to the report on the Senate Select Committee on Red Tape on childcare. If ever there was an area of policy lacking a purpose and coherent framework, it's childcare. Let's start with a few basic questions. Why should taxpayers subsidise the cost of childcare? Why should people who want children but can't have them subsidise it? Why should people who don't want children subsidise it? Why should gays and lesbians subsidise it? Why should it be subsidised by people who choose to stay at home to look after their kids full-time, but whose spouse or partner works and pays tax? What is the public benefit in taking around $9 billion from some people and using it to help pay for the childcare of other people's kids? What social evil, what negative social outcome is being prevented by this massive transfer of money? How much better is our society now compared to 20 years ago when none of this funding occurred? If you are looking for an answer in the government's response to the Red Tape report, you'll be disappointed. In one place it says the primary role of childcare is to encourage workforce participation. In another place it says it is to improve the educational and development outcomes for children. To make an obvious point, they are not the same. Indeed, they are somewhat in conflict with each other. Encouraging workforce participation means making childcare affordable to the people who would not otherwise return to work after having children. To some extent, the recent changes are a move in that direction, with its better targeting. But really, the targeting is still farcical. What justification can there be for subsidising the childcare of someone earning $349,000 a year? Anyone earning that amount of money is not going to decide to return to the workforce as a result of a subsidy of a few $1,000s on their childcare. Indeed, but for me, the subsidy would have been open-ended. Someone earning $1 million a year would have received a childcare subsidy. Clearly, substantially better targeting is needed. High-income people should not be receiving a childcare subsidy to encourage them to return to work when the subsidy has no influence on whether they return to work. As you come down the income scale, you will eventually reach a point at which the subsidy is indeed critical to the decision to return to work. The problem is the government has no idea what that point is. It's locked in a political vice created by handing out other people's money, and it's afraid to get out of it. Perhaps it might help if it pointed out that better targeting might actually allow an increase in the subsidy for those who genuinely need it. In any case, we are spending a vast amount of money to get people to return to work after having children based on precious little information about how well it's working and whether it can be improved without throwing yet more billions of taxpayers' dollars at it. As to the second objective, improving the educational and development outcomes for children, that of course is a worthy aspiration. The problem here is that the evidence to support early childhood education actually improving educational and development outcomes for all kids is not there. What the evidence shows is that early childhood education is only of benefit like that when the kids come from dysfunctional households. That is, where the parent is extremely poor and the parents are essentially deadbeats. In normal households, the outcomes are no better than staying home with mum. Even if they start school without certain skills, such as being unable to spell gender inequality, they catch up very quickly. Which is good, because otherwise the social engineers would be promoting Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Children would be taken away and required to attend early childhood education because mothers are deemed incompetent to do the job. And as we know, because we have thousands of years of evidence, mothers overwhelmingly do a great job. The bottom line is this: we are spending $9 billion a year on a program that is barely targeted at the people who need it most, those who wouldn't otherwise return to work, and kids in dysfunctional households. Rather, we have a massive feel-good program in which money is given to people who are not poor but who happen to have young children, and with much of that money in many cases coming from people who earn less than those who receive it. And despite the helpful analysis in the Red Tape Committee's interim report and its very modest recommendations, the government is blind to its failures. In the past, we didn't fund childcare at all. Now we do. Why? The government's response should have sought to tell us. It doesn't.